to descend. And you know me, if I don't see it, it's not real. I have to see it. I have to legit see it. Not just see the thing where it tells me we're okay. I have to see everything. And by everything I mean my face. Like that's just where there it is. I have seen it and it is good. I have seen it and it is good. Beautiful. All right. All right. My hair is all over the place at this point. It is just everywhere. And I'm just letting it happen. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon to all my East Coasters. Good morning to all my West Coasters. If you're in my time zone, hope you had a great breakfast. Good evening to all the evening time zones. And if you're coming at us from the future, Australia, New Zealand, you're in the future. You're a day ahead. Did you figure out climate change? The rest of us are counting on you. No pressure. Shout out to everyone who makes this show possible. Our friends over at ZT.com, ZHITEA.com. Their tea kind of rules. You can get their tea wholesale now because of the pandemic. And they are a wonderful independent tea shop located in Austin, Texas, which is having a difficult time right now. There's some winter storms in Texas. Y'all know about that. So show them some love if you can. Also, our friends over at triageoil.com, TRIAGE oil.com. Trendy name makes topical pain oil for your body that I use myself, and it works wonders for my neck. And thank you for the guitar picks and all the care packages. You know that makes my day. And our friends over at Indie Left. Indie Left is the only place to find all the articles and vids from your favorite creators. I'm there. They update the platform twice a day. To learn more and to subscribe to everything they got going on and to join their Discord community, you can check them out on the web at independentleft.media. That's independentleft.media. And also, I always mention, I wrote their theme song. I did a theme song for them, which if you want your own theme song, patreon.com/Ron Placone. Give what you can level. All right, my guest today, I'm super excited to have this guy. He is one of my favorite comedians. And he's got some news going on too himself, and we're going to be talking about that a good bit. But please welcome to the show, Mr. Ted Alexandro. Ted, what's up, buddy?
Ron, I'm doing well, buddy. How are you?
I'm good, man. How's your quarantine life?
Quarantine life surprisingly could not be better. My wife and I have a 1-year-old baby boy, so I've just been pretty much tunnel vision, taking care of him every day with my wife, and she's pregnant with our second now. So I'm trying to be as active as I can, and I have no excuse because I'm not going anywhere. So it's pretty much a hostage situation.
There you go, man. Yeah. Well, congratulations on that. Congratulations on the child and the other one coming. Gonna have a whole party, man. Got a whole family going.
Yeah. It's good times, man. I'm enjoying it.
That is awesome. Well, I look forward to talking about what's been going on with you and the SNL thing. We're going to get into that here in a little bit. But first, you're going to get your news on with me. And here's something pretty exciting, folks. This is happening right now. And we saw this on the Twitter sphere over the past few days. I am stoked about this. It's happening. There is a strike. So this is from the Fight for 15, which keep in mind, Fight for 15 at this point is basically symbolic, because they were fighting for $15 an hour about a decade ago when $15 an hour was an actual living wage. It's even more than that now, but the Fight for 15 is still a symbolic fight. So today, fast food workers across the country are striking for fair pay, union rights, and respect on the job. They're striking in 15 different cities. We'll go over to this Guardian article here. And Ted, I wanted to mention this to you first, though. I think you told me this story a while ago, but wasn't your kind of descent into like activism, didn't it start with a comedian strike? Is that true?
I like the way you call it, a descent into madness. Yes.
Yeah. That thing that ruined your life.
Yes, it's just we haven't hit bottom yet, but hopefully soon. Yeah, you're right. Actually, I didn't really consider myself an activist. Even as I was doing that, I organized the comedians in New York City for a pay raise on 2 occasions. The first time was with a petition in the early 2000s. So that was kind of on a smaller scale. Maybe we got a little over 100 signatures, but we did in fact get a pay raise. And that was kind of, before social media really had taken root. So a lot of it was just literally face to face, getting people to sign petitions. The second time was the New York Comedians Coalition, and that was a bigger effort with Russ Maneve and Tom Shalhoub, Buddy Bolton. There were about 4 of us that were kind of the founders of the New York Comedians Coalition, and we got a second pay raise at that time. So yeah, that, without realizing it, I was becoming a labor activist, and yeah, it was kind of the beginnings of me being aware of the larger issues that are so interrelated within capitalism. And then, of course, when Occupy sprang up, I was very much involved with that in New York City as well.
So here's what's going on today. We're going to go over to The Guardian, which, isn't it interesting that you don't see coverage of this going on in your own corporate media. You don't see the United States corporate media saying much about this. You got to go over to other places, which I'm not going to say The Guardian doesn't have its problems. Of course they do. But they'll actually cover stuff like strikes and protests going on in the United States, unlike the actual U.S. media. They won't do that. But here's what they're saying. Hopefully it makes history. The fight for 15 closes in on mighty win for U.S. workers. So fast food workers, they're walking out today hoping to push through a minimum wage raise that will benefit tens of millions of people. Here's a list. They have a list of the cities going on further down here. And it's happening in California. It's happening in here. Let me see. They had a list somewhere. But it's happening. I know California, Durham, North Carolina. It's happening in Atlanta. It's happening in Chicago. It's happening in where else? Brooklyn.
I guess those
people are walking out.
Those $2,000 checks didn't come through in Atlanta or anywhere else. So this is Plan B.
Yeah, isn't that great how quick that promise just diminished? And now it's just like, hey, it's going to be $1,400 maybe. Well, it might just be, you know what? Screw it. Jill made an art project. Enjoy it and shut up. She wore a scrunchie.
Yeah, it's amazing how interrelated all these things are, right? Like if people had a $15 minimum wage going back to when you alluded to, like when this was all started, probably a decade ago, then things wouldn't be as dire as they are, and people wouldn't be as desperate to go on strike. They wouldn't be as desperate waiting on a $2,000 check as promised. But because these promises are never delivered on, people are still waiting, and these are people that are vulnerable. Obviously, folks working in the service industry, in restaurants and fast food, they're very vulnerable. So this is very courageous. Like I said, having been involved in labor negotiations and the threat of a strike, when we were the New York Comedians Coalition, there was a threat of a strike. But these folks they're in a vulnerable position where they're already in very tenuous circumstances, making, really not a living wage. So kudos to them really for amplifying that message and for going on strike, taking that step.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you a general strike guy? Do you think that's what it's going to take? Because I am a general strike stan. I stand for 2 things, general strike and love. That's it. Those are the only 2.
You chose the right 2, man. That's a good way to go.
I just think it's the only way. Like, what else can you do with this? But you got to just shut it down.
I'm all for shutting it down. I'm not knowledgeable enough to know what that looks like and if it's feasible, and are we putting demands on the weakest? Because here are the most vulnerable, the people that are making essentially minimum wage, and where they're the ones that have to go on strike. The Amazon people, they're the ones that have to, they have the most to risk because they're not even really, they're barely making ends meet to begin with.
Right.
So, I think it puts a lot of pressure on the most vulnerable. But again, I'm all for it. I'm all for shutting shit down and shutting down bridges and shutting, just whatever's going to grind capitalism to a halt. And I think a general strike is definitely a piece of that. But I'm not knowledgeable enough to know, is it a reasonable demand to put on the working people that are most vulnerable, But
so I
hope something happens.
I think that's an excellent point. The way I try to look at it is that the demand is not just on working people. The demand is on all of us. Like, the demand is on all of us, because for something like this to happen, and I don't know all the ins and out of making it happen either. I don't think anyone really does, or it would have happened by now. But like, the way I see it is, it's just like, for something like this to be successful, you need to have very extensive mutual aid. You need to have everybody doing your part. You need to have people to make sure that the kids are at school, which it's virtual school now. So to make sure they're online, to make sure they're at school, people to make sure no one becomes food insecure during this thing. Nobody becomes housing insecure during this thing. Because like you said, the system's set up in a way so that people are one paycheck away from going under. That's by design. That's why in other countries, they strike a hell of a lot more. Their healthcare is not tied to their job. They're getting paid better wages so they can strike. When things aren't the way they should be, they strike. And part of it's because they're actually able to.
Yeah, and these things have been ongoing, as you said, and even like the teacher strikes these last several years. But because of the fact that U.S. media does not really cover these things in the way that they should be, or connect them in the way that they should be, this strike today is really part of an ongoing series of strikes with healthcare workers, with teachers, with Amazon workers. Striking is alive and well in the United States, but the media certainly would not let you know that. But the thing that I hold out hope for is the second half of what you stand for, love, and the unknown of what will coalesce and when will it happen. I think all of the things that people are working towards, you never know what that spark is going to be that touches things off to a larger kind of movement.
Oh, absolutely, man. And also, you bring up everything going on in labor. Simultaneously, as we're talking about this, which for anyone tuning in late, we're talking about the Fight for 15 fast food strike happening today. It's happening across the U.S. in at least 15 cities, among them Atlanta, Chicago, New York, Durham, North Carolina. And simultaneously, while this is going on, they're pushing for unionization at Amazon. Christian Smalls and some other organizers are fighting for unions at Amazon. And to hear about this stuff, you got to go to places like this, comedians talking on YouTube, because the corporate media is not going to cover it.
Yeah, yeah, and the insanity of a company that their profits have grown exponentially during the pandemic, right? Again, when workers have been most vulnerable, they've been without the basic supplies needed to work, the basic safety precautions. So they have been really on the front lines, and the company has exploded in terms of their profits. So it's just it's really it really draws into sharp focus all of the issues in American capitalism, and Amazon, of course, is at the center of all of that.
Oh man. And then you see these same tired arguments if workers get $15 an hour, if your Big Mac's going to cost $40. Like, no, that's not how it works. That's not how it works. CEO pay is 475 times to 1. I'll repeat that. 475 times to 1. So there's a lot of other places they can cut corners. That's just one of many recommendations. That's not how it works. The price of your product is not going to go up to the point where people wouldn't be able to buy it, or they would go out of business. It's interesting how people like to point out supply and demand when it's convenient for them.
Yeah, all of the conversations around, like, first of all, like the price of a Big Mac, I can't remember the last time I ate one, so I don't even
Yeah,
know.
me neither.
Like I got shafted on a corporate gig that I did for McDonald's in like the early 2000s, and I haven't set foot. Like, they refused to pay me for close to a year. So like I just like I refused to set foot in a McDonald's, and it's been the best thing for my life. I haven't eaten there since. But yeah, this argument that suddenly a Big Mac is going to be $1,000 item or whatever, it's ridiculous, and on its face, it's absurd. So hopefully, it's these kind of movements that keep drawing attention to it, because I feel as though, as is the case with so many of these issues, the majority of Americans are squarely in favor of a $15 minimum wage, squarely in favor of healthcare, all on and on and on. But the media, as we've been saying, the through line, they don't cover it, or if they do, they don't cover it in a way that centers workers and centers that this is plausible and should in fact be the case. So hopefully momentum just continues to grow, and what's going on today is a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like it's so just kind of brutal when you just look at the surface where we call people essential workers. Why? Because they are essential workers. And yet we just treat them like garbage. Like the corporations just treat them. I mean, you hear about people working 12-hour shifts during a time like this. People they couldn't even be bothered to give hazard pay out near where I live, Long Beach, which isn't too far from me here in California. There's a couple, I believe it's Kroger locations that are closing because they'd rather close than give their workers hazard pay. And it's unbelievable, man. It's absolutely unbelievable. And then they'll have these photo ops. They'll do these things. Hey, we're looking out for our workers. And hey, at the beginning of this thing, we gave them $1 or $2 hazard pay for 6 weeks because we wanted the nice marketing campaign. And now we're treating them like absolute garbage, even though how screwed would we be, we being all of us at this point, if we couldn't go to the grocery stores to get food at a time like this, if we couldn't go to our pharmacies to get medicine at a time like this, if the distribution chain was screwed.
Yeah, I mean, propaganda is so thick around all of these types of things. Like if you're propped up as essential or heroic in American culture, you're probably on suicide watch. Because like if you think about like the military, right? They're the ones that are always propped up as heroes, and yet they're disposable as far as the system is concerned. Or even cops, with all of the kind of divisive stuff around cops and defunding the police and all of that. But cops are often there are higher rates of suicide as well. And now these essential workers too, like people that kind of have these precarious existences are very often they're seen as disposable, really, when you get down to it, by capitalism, but they're propped up as heroic as far as the campaigning and the packaging of it goes, because what it does really is it preserves capital. All of the people that we mentioned here, whether it's imperialism around the world or cops that are protecting capitalist interests all throughout the country, or essential workers, the lip service is about the best that they're going to get from like the ownership class.
Yeah. I am for defunding the police, though. I do think we got to do that.
100%. Yeah, no, I'm just pointing out that.
No. I know what you mean. Yeah. No. So
yeah.
Let's go over. Yeah, no, I'm for that too. I think a lot of times when you say abolish, you gotta just really make sure you indicate what you mean by that. Because like sometimes like when you say abolish the police, people are like, well, wait, so you mean there's just no law enforcement at all? And it's like, well, no, that's not what I mean. I mean that the idea of a police officer, when you really break it down, there's no reason for it to exist. It's absolutely batshit crazy when you think about what that job is. So what we should do instead is we should reinvent how law enforcement works in our lives and what it entails. And you shouldn't just have this person with a gun who is likely poorly trained and wasn't screened at all, responding to every situation.
100%. Yeah. Ill-equipped and armed is not a good person to send out into all of these various types of situations.
If you just described it to someone, they would be like, why would you have a system like that? That makes zero sense. It's like, well, that's what we do, though. And some people think we should just give it more money. We shouldn't change anything.
Yes.
But yeah, defund and abolish. So let's go over to the news you're making. Ted, I love you, buddy, but I am a believer in punching up, and here you are punching down at poor SNL. Look at
yeah, I know it's off brand for me, going after little old SNL.
This small indie show,
Yeah.
This
like a comedian like myself should not be taking down
one another.
a boutique little show like SNL. Yeah, man. Last Sunday, I woke up to just a barrage of messages saying, "Hey, did you see SNL did your Zillow joke?"
Is that how it happened? People were like message. Okay, because we're gonna play your video in just a second, but before we do that,
Yeah.
so let's hear like so you wake up and people are like texting you and messaging you.
I mean, like I said, I have a 1-year-old. I'm in bed by 10 o'clock. You know,
Hmm.
I don't stay up for SNL. I don't know what the hell's going on. So yeah, I get all these messages saying that SNL stole your Zillow joke. I have a joke about Zillow that was on my last special, which I put out in 2020. It's called Cut Up. It's available on YouTube. And that's a joke I'd been doing since 2019. You know, the finished version that wound up on my special was in fact from 2019 because the title Cut Up refers to this is a series of shows that were cut together for my special. Since I couldn't due to COVID, I couldn't shoot it in a theater, so we wound up cutting together the special. So the Zillow joke that's on my special was from 2019, and yeah, it was basically the same joke. And
Yeah, can we watch your? Is it cool if we play the video? Is that all right?
let's do it. Yeah.
All right, so here's the video. This is your pinned tweet, and here's the bit, and here's what SNL did. Here's kind of the collage explaining what went down.
She and I do not sext one another. No judgment if you do. We just don't sex. What we do is we send one another properties on Zillow or Trulia. That's like our dirty talk.
Are you bored?
And then here's SNL.
Looking for something to spice up your life?
Oh, yeah. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. You are a bad girl.
The guest house has its own little kitchen.
Oh. 800,000. You are nasty. Who likes a big backyard? Who likes a big backyard?
Zilla.
So that's what went down. That's the SNL thing coupled with your stand-up. And, you know, so I heard about this and I saw, you know, your tweet and I watched the video and, you know, it's one of those things. And we talked about this briefly off mic, but, you know, I went through that Twitter thread and I saw some people, some comics that were kind of like not on your side on this one a little bit that were saying, oh, well, you know, and here's the thing. In our world, parallel thought, yes, that does happen. There are times where it's like there might be some overlap in something and it was just whatever, but you have to look at the context. And I feel like it's the comedian's job to kind of tell the difference between, yeah, this is just a little bit of parallel thought or it's a similar premise but different execution, and oh, there's way too many similarities here. And in this case, it's like, okay, you were talking about it. I mean, first of all, the premise of, you know, looking at real estate for like pleasure. Okay, that's a thing that's been around, certainly. But in this particular case, you're talking about Zillow specifically. So do they. You bring it up in the area of sexting. So do they. You bring it up in sexting in a romantic context. So do they. You were performing this joke where? At the Comedy Cellar in New York City, where SNL writers go. So, I mean, this is like a textbook example of like, okay, here's where this is stealing, you know, like, and I don't know. I look forward to getting your take on this. I don't know if it was intentional. I'd like to think it was unintentional. I'd like to think that somebody probably saw you do that bit, forgot about it, not subconsciously, but kind of forgot about it in real time, and then pitched this thing, didn't realize it. And now upon seeing this, they should be like, you know what? I fucked up. Yeah, I probably did see Ted do that bit. They're way too similar. Obviously, we gotta make it right.
Yeah, I mean, all of the scenarios that you brought up are possible. You know, who knows what really happened? All I know is, as a comedian, when you see a bit that you put out, you know, a year ago that you've been doing for 2 years, and as you said, I've been doing it at the Comedy Cellar, where plenty of SNL writers and performers come through. It made me uncomfortable, and also the fact, you know, what recourse do you really have when you're a comedian and SNL takes a joke, you know? And I've had this happen in the past where it was like, you know, a bigger comedian or someone, you have something that's overlapping. Sometimes you just have to say like, all right, I guess I can't do the joke if SNL's doing it or whatever. But luckily with social media now, you can fight back and at the very least say, look, this is a joke that I did years ago, and it's on my special. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. You can judge for yourself. And at the very least, you can kind of claim that, you did the joke first. And, in a weird way, it kind of also creates publicity and it creates eyeballs. And also I decided to make a joke of it. Like I didn't come at them and say like my lawyers are, I'll see you in court. It was like, Venmo me $1 million by kickoff of the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And then I held a press conference at halftime of the Super Bowl on my Instagram. So I kind of like I made a joke of it. And then a fan of my work created a change.org petition that has like over 1,300 signatures. So just kind of the goodwill of people saying, look, this is messed up that SNL did this. This is on his special. So at the very least, it kind of creates awareness of that paradigm where, as you well know, when you're in this precarious position of being a freelancer, being in the arts, you don't have much recourse other than to publicly call them out and demand $1 million on Venmo.
Do you know who pitched the bit? Like, have you found out anything since this campaign's been going on?
A few people tweeted the names of the writers of that sketch. I think it was Anna Dresden, who I don't know, but I think she's a stand-up. And then this other guy, Streeter or something, I forget his last name. And yeah, there were 3 writers. So, like I said, who knows for sure? But when you're doing, I did that bit at the Cellar all the time, like for a year, so if anyone came through, it's very possible that they could have seen it. And like you said, malicious or not, sometimes things just stick in your brain. But
Sure.
The fact of the matter is, it's pretty cut and dry. That bit is on my special from 2020.
So just make it right. Just put Alexandro in his sketch and pay him some money. That's it. You got the resources to do both those things.
Well, what's funny is so many people have said like, yeah, hire him as a writer or make him the host. I'm like, what makes you think I want to be on SNL? Like that show hasn't been funny in years. I don't want any part of SNL. I don't want to be the host. What I want is to be them to acknowledge that the bit existed first, and whether they stole it or not, that, the way it works typically, if I was like somebody that had endless resources, they would have to at least acknowledge, yes, he wrote this first. There would have to be some acknowledge and probably some remuneration for the fact that it was mine first,
Yeah.
But like I said, all you can do is just have fun with it and talk a little shit and, make outrageous demands. And it has been good, actually, because people have been going to see my special on YouTube. The numbers have gone up significantly, even in the last couple of weeks. So, to me, that's a plus. It's like I said, when you're a freelancer, when you're kind of you don't have a budget to promote these things, you just put out your stuff and you try to promote it as best you can. In a weird way, it's almost a gift that falls into your lap, under horrible circumstances, but it helps promote.
Totally, man. Well, so this is a story, and I'm not going to say the comic's name because I don't know if they'd be okay with me sharing it or not, but a comic that I know, this happened to them, and this was pre-internet. They were a club comic going all around the country, and they heard one of their jokes pretty much verbatim on Leno. And so, and again, this is pre-internet. So they wrote the network, and, the person said, hey, I'm a comic. I've been a comedian for so many years. This is the joke that I do. I heard this joke pretty much verbatim on Leno recently. I've been doing the joke for this long. And some time passed, and he got a phone call from Jay Leno. Wow. And he picks up the call, and it's Jay Leno himself. He goes, this is Jay Leno. And he goes, wow, okay. And he goes, I heard that you're accusing me of stealing your material.
One of us has to do a Jay Leno impression as well.
I heard you. I heard you think I'm stealing your material. I heard you think I'm stealing your material. And the guy goes, no, I didn't accuse you of stealing my material. I think that one of your writers, either intentionally or unintentionally, submitted a joke that I do that I've been doing all over the country, and yeah, it's basically my joke. And then Jay goes, well, I mean, what do you want me to pay you? I can pay you. I mean, I want to make it right. And the guy goes, yeah. So what happened was the guy actually said, I'd like some compensation. That'd be great. Which I think it was a joke. So I think it was just $50 at the time or something like that. But then he was like, but I think I should be writing for you. And he ended up getting a freelance Leno gig out of it. He said, I mean, the way he tells the story, from that day forward, he would just open up a newspaper to start his day, have a cup of coffee, pound out 30 topical jokes, fax them to Leno. Anything Leno used, he got paid. And it was a couple hundred extra bucks a week typically, which, hey, back in those days, that's a lot of money, especially if you're on the road full time. So
sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's a decent outcome considering, the alternatives. Like you could very easily see that letter just going nowhere, but to get a call from Leno himself, so I'm still waiting for Lorne Michaels to call, but we'll see.
Do you got a Lorne impression? I don't know if I have one.
I mean, I could do a Dr. Evil impression, which is basically supposed to be Lorne, right? I understand we stole a bit of yours.
You said I stole your material.
Right.
From Cut Up.
Am I pronouncing that correctly? Yeah. I don't know. I've met Lorne Michaels once in my life. I did a submission, like one of those showcases at the comic strip, probably back in late 90s, early 2000s, where they're recasting and they take a look at, probably hundreds of comedians. But I did my set at the strip that night, and I actually got to see Lorne afterwards. I just happened to be in the lobby afterwards, and he was walking out with kind of a little entourage. And he walked over to me and he said, "Great set. We'll be stealing some of your stuff at an undisclosed time."
I see a Zillow bit in the future. What's Zillow? This is the 90s. We'll find out.
That's right. Yeah,
he can see it in the future.
He was complimentary. Yes, he saw the big picture. But yeah, that was the only time I ever actually met him. But yeah, who knows, man? I mean, like I said, in a certain sense, it's you have a little fun with it. It's comedic. You demand $1 million. But on another level, it's very serious because, as I said, a life in the arts, a life as a freelancer, it's very precarious. You don't really have many avenues other than social media. And fortunately for me, a lot of people kind of picked up and retweeted it and amplified it. So,
well, and it got picked up, wasn't it? Vice picked it up, right? Like, didn't Vice pick it up? And
Vice and a few other Vulture. A bunch of people wrote articles on it. So that's been gratifying. Just that, because I think it was also a very popular sketch. It was really one of their most popular sketches. From one of the articles I read, they said, in the last decade, maybe. So, so I think all of it has kind of helped to create a little bit of publicity around the fact that I had done the joke first.
Do you think they did it on purpose, or do you think it was an accident?
I honestly don't know. I think either is possible, and as I said in press conference, in your heart, writers, in your heart what you did, and that's the true measure. So yeah, I don't know. Either is possible. I would hope that it was a case where it was either a coincidence or parallel thinking or whatever. But as I said, it's important to me that people know that I did it first.
So here's the petition. We'll show everyone the petition. You can go to change.org, sign it, and you're almost at the 1,500 mark, man.
Let's get it up there, folks.
Folks. We'll include the links in all the clips and stuff like that, so folks can sign it who are watching this show. Let's get it to 1,500. So you haven't had any communication from the network or anyone? Because, I mean, it's been out there. They had to have seen it. They have to know it exists.
I would think so at this point, because it was Super Bowl Sunday, and I think that worked in my favor too, that, Super Bowl Sunday, so many people are on social media and there's so much kind of going on anyway. So yeah, it really kind of snowballed a bit. So I would think somebody over there, and also there's so many comedians, Michael Che's the head writer. I know him. I'm friends with him. I've known him a long time. So I would think that somebody kind of tipped them off like, oh, take a look at this. But, again, them being the behemoth that they are, they don't really have any need to address it unless it becomes so big a story. I think, depending on the comedian too, I'm not a household name. So if you're somebody bigger and it becomes like a really big story, then maybe they would feel pressure to do that. So yeah, who knows? Who knows? I mean, like I said, I'm just kind of riding the horse as far as it goes. And, the petition came up and then all these stories came up and press came up. So I figured like, yeah, why not see what we can do, if nothing else, to make people aware of my work.
When you first saw it that morning, what was your initial reaction? Were you angry, or were you kind of like, well, this could be an opportunity to have some fun? Were you flattered?
I don't think that I really saw it as an opportunity at that time. When I first saw it, it was more like annoyance. Yeah, just a little like, oh man, this kind of sucks that they took the bit, or they, it's basically the same exact joke. It seems a little too close for comfort. Um, and I was kind of weighing my options. My wife, to her credit, was like, yeah, why don't you just like have some fun with it and just kind of, let people know, but, make a joke of it. So that was good advice, because I don't know if I would have either just not done anything or maybe reached out to somebody behind the scenes, but I was like, let me just demand $1 million and and see where it goes. And like I said, what was interesting was seeing how it just grew on social media. That was what was funny, like people sharing it and people retweeting it. And, that was what was kind of fun. It was a fun way to spend Super Bowl Sunday, just watching the thing go nuts, because that was the true measure of, I also edited that short video that you showed. I just took the time to put them side by side, because I figured like, well, if people can see them, side by side, that might help as well. And yeah, it took on a life of its own. So I'm glad that it did.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll be honest with you, Ted. I paid more attention to your thing than I did to the Super Bowl. I didn't watch the Super Bowl this year. I usually will like. I mean, usually you're going to an event, so it's just on and it's just like an excuse to socialize. But with the pandemic, you're just like, so I just had no desire. Like I didn't have the game on. I was just kind of whatever. And then I guess like there was that dude that went streaking, and apparently the halftime show was not great. I mean, I don't know. That's all I heard.
No, same. It kind of gave me an excuse to like, half watch the Super Bowl, but I was really more scrolling my phone, just seeing what the hell was going on with my demand for $1 million. And also I did the halftime press conference. So that was kind of like silly as well. That's on my Instagram. So yeah, I kind of tried to straddle the line between like, I'm dead serious about this. I expect $1 million in my Venmo. And another thing that was fascinating was the demand for $1 million on Venmo. People started sending me $1 here, $5 there, to the point where I think I got close to $400 from people just saying like, "Hey man, supporting you. Good on you for speaking out against SNL." So that was like a nice kind of show of solidarity from people that I wasn't even expecting. That they reached out and sent me money on Venmo.
Now, were they already fans of yours, or were these like new people who are like, "Hey, I enjoyed that bit and I watched your stand up and you're the guy, so here's some money"?
It was a mixture. It was a mixture of people.
Nice.
Hey man, I never heard of you, but they definitely stole your bit. Here's, have a beer on me. Here's $10. Other people that said, I've been a fan of yours since you put out your first special. And here's $5, here's $10, whatever. Yeah. So there was a mixture of people. But the weirdest thing was there was one username at L Michaels that I don't know what to make of that.
This is shut the fuck up money.
Right. That's what it said in the
$1.
Right. Good luck to you.
I remember that set. It was good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
man. So it's been fun. The whole thing it's been well worth it. It pretty much hit every mark that I was going for. Like, let people know it was mine. Have a little fun with it. Let people know that SNL has stolen bits in the past. So I think it created awareness around all those things. So it's been worth it.
how do you think this is going to end, man? Do you think, because I feel like they have to have some kind of, I mean, they have to acknowledge it to some extent, don't you think? I mean, I feel like there's just too much going on at this point. I mean, you've been published in a few major publications,
Yeah, I don't know. I'm curious if they will. I'm inclined to think that they won't, just because of the fact that it kind of behooves them to hope that it goes away and just stay quiet, right? Like the longer they stay quiet and just kind of wait for it to fizzle out or whatever, that kind of works in their favor. So that's why I'm hoping, like, the petition kind of keeps growing, and just that people, because people are still finding it. Not everybody found it that first, on Super Bowl Sunday or in the subsequent days. So, if people keep finding it, that's great. To me, it's important that they're aware of that dynamic of, as you said, with your friend who Leno later contacted. A lot of comedians have been in this position, and there's not a whole lot you can do. So for me, it's actually been a pretty positive outcome given the alternatives.
I feel like, you know what? And maybe I'm just being Joe Optimism because it's not me in your shoes, but I think I think they're going to give you a settlement of sorts. I think you're going to get some cash. I don't think it's going to be $1 million, but but
well, what's funny, man, is I've heard that Zillow stock has gone through the roof because of in part because of that bit. So many people are talking about it, and Zillow's model is largely advertisement based because of the fact that people go and they scroll and they look at properties and stuff. So this sketch, in a big way, was kind of just further advertisement for Zillow. So who knows really the dollar amounts that this bit that I wrote has kind of helped with SNL and with their advertising and all of the articles that have been written about them. And, like, who really knows what so maybe $1 million is actually a bargain.
Man, now I feel like we're dragging it into, like, there's actually a really sad ending to this story. In the end, who were the real winners? The biggest capitalists of all, Zillow. Zillow were the real winners here. And then they just sued Ted and SNL for copyright infringement. That's what they couldn't do. They could not do that. That wouldn't be a law, but yeah.
Well, you'll never really go wrong betting that the capitalists win in the end, So yeah, that's a likely outcome. But I'm hoping, like, when things are true, and this, Ron, like when something is true and people can sense, really what's going on, it tends to have legs. And like what's happening with Fight for 15 today, I'm certainly not comparing myself to a movement like that. It's obviously much more important and has much more dire consequences. But when people sense that something is true, they get behind it and they amplify it. So in a smaller way, obviously, I think that's what's happened with this. And it's been, as a comedian too, it's gratifying when your fellow comedians amplify it, and people that say they take up for you and they like, I've known Ted for 20 years or whatever, and obviously this is his bit. So, the goodwill that's come about has been a really kind of a gratifying side thing that my colleagues vouch for me.
So let's talk big picture for just a second, man, because I always dig your input. And especially since you are populating the planet.
At an alarming rate.
Yeah, right? Like you got you got a solid ratio going, Ted. Well, so like how do you kind of see us getting out of this? Like what do you kind of like where do you, if you have hope, where do you get it from? And obviously you have some because, you're making people.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know if those are necessarily have to be true, but I am hopeful. I am hopeful. And I think my hope comes from like what's the alternative? Like you really I think our core uh has to remain rooted in hope and love, as you said earlier. Like that's what animates us even to do the shows that we do, like uh the hope is that all of these movements that have been coalescing over the past decade, in sort of an accelerated way, but even going further back, obviously throughout history. I mean, this country's history is not lacking for movements for justice and freedom. So yeah, I feel as though we're part of a continuum. We're part of a continuum of movements that are advocating for justice. So now, with things being even more dire, as you say, with the climate crisis, and capitalism really shows no signs of slowing, despite the ample evidence that a 180 is called for. Whether it's the 2008 crash or all of these climate crises that continue to pop up, and now obviously with the pandemic and all of the financial ramifications of that, like something needs to be done, and it only gets more dire. But I am hopeful because I feel as though you never know what that moment is going to be. But as I said, truth is really. I have a firm belief that truth, even if it takes time, it does rise to the top, and people coalesce around truth.
So I wanted to ask you this one thing too, because you were asked, I forget, it might have been on the Jimmy Dore show or something else, but you were asked just about electoralism in general, and your answer was just so like just short and perfect, where you just said like, look, somebody who has the views that I do, we're just in this country just not represented on the ballot. Like the views that I have are just not represented on the ballot, which is true about you, is true about me, is true about most of the people who watch this show. So, do you ever see that changing?
Well, it does seem as though, at least on the surface, like there's lip service towards a lot of the things that you talk about on your show, and I talk about on mine, and obviously Jimmy. And it is funny that comedians are kind of at the center of amplifying so many of these messages. But I am hopeful that in the electoral realm, although I think that's almost like the last realm that adopts it. Like, it has to happen at the grassroots level. It has to happen like we're talking about it, that activist networks are talking about it. And then it has to then get to the politicians where there's pressure coming from below. I don't put a whole lot of faith in electoral politics, but I do think that things are getting so dire that business as usual can't stand anymore. And whether it's the next presidential election, hopefully it will be, or the one after that, someone has to make inroads that is genuinely articulating all these types of things, because really the future of the country, of the planet, probably depends upon it.
Yeah, that's the truth, man. So where can people go to find out more about you, Ted? Where can people go to watch this awesome special?
Thanks, Ron. People can go to @TedAlexandro across all social media platforms. People can watch Cut Up and see the Zillow bit in its original form.
The OG Zillow bit.
The OG Zillow on YouTube. And I have 4 specials on YouTube that people can check out. And of course, the Ted Alexandro Show is every Thursday on YouTube as well.
And Ted is one of my, and by the way, like I have said that before, that Ted is one of my favorite stand-ups. So people know I'm not just saying it because you're on the show today. I have many times said Ted is one of my favorite stand-ups. Somebody asked me recently who are some of my favorite comics out right now, and I gave them a list. Ted was on that list, so
I saw that on Twitter. Thank you, Ron. No, you
of
have
course.
been
Well,
very complimentary. I appreciate that.
well, I love your stuff, man. You're one of those stand-ups. Whenever I watch your stand-up, I am entertained and also angry because as a stand-up myself, I'm like, fuck, Ted's funny. God damn it. But seriously, folks, Ted is one of my favorite stand-ups to watch. So please check out his stuff and follow him on social media and sign that petition. We'll be including the links to that. We'll be back tomorrow with a local San Pedro activist because we've actually done something pretty special here in San Pedro, and we're going to be talking about that tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. In the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy says meow. I say peace. Peace.